The senator from Nevada.
I ask that the quorum be dispensed with.
Without objection.
Thank you. Today, I want to share with my colleagues and the American people what I witnessed on a visit to a couple of immigration detention facilities on our southern border, and to share the stories of the people, children, infants being held there. On a visit to an adult detention facility, I sat down with a group of 6 mothers whose children had been taken from them. One of them, her name was Anna, and she had a 5-year-old daughter she brought with her to the United States. After witnessing a brutal murder in her neighborhood and receiving death threats in her home country, she decided to leave that country to keep her 5-year-old daughter safe. She traveled 3,000 miles to get to our southern border. And when she finally arrived, she thought, I'm safe, I made it. I'm going to tell them who I am and why I'm here, because I know I finally made it to safety. So she flagged down Customs and Border Patrol agents, thinking that they would help her. But when she did, CBP officials arrested her. They took her into custody, and then they separated her from her daughter. Anna's daughter was put on a bus and driven hundreds of miles away. And as Anna was telling this story to me, every single one of the mothers began to cry. Because what Anna told me was that was the first time that she'd ever been separated from her 5-year-old daughter, and had no idea where her daughter was or what they were doing with her. And all of the women, as Anna was telling me this story, had experienced the same thing. Each one of the women I spoke with had children under the age of 12 who were taken away from them. Their stories were the same. They had all faced horrific gang violence and abuse in their home country and fled to protect their family. They had been raped and tortured. They saw loved ones killed before their very eyes. Another one of the women I spoke with, her name was Griselda, and she explained that in her community, the gangs expect extortion payments every week from business owners like herself. And if you can't pay, they come to your house and kidnap your children or rape them and kill them. One day, gang members came and started threatening her son. She knew in that moment that she had 2 options: stay and watch her son die, or pack up her children and run. I asked a group of women, why didn't you go to the police for help? And they explained to me that the police in their country are just as corrupt as the gangs. In their country, there is no rule of law. There are no protections. If you want to save your children's lives, your only option is to run. And that's what these women did. They came to the U.S. expecting to find freedom and protection. Instead, they were thrown in jail, and their children were loaded on buses and driven away. And these parents want to know now, where are their children? When they asked me, I told them I didn't have the information they needed, and I too was asking the same questions. But I promised them that I would take their stories back with me to Washington, D.C. and share them with the American people. Mr. President, because of President Trump's inhumane family separation policy, we have almost 3,000 children separated from their parents. Their moms and dads just want to have their children back in their arms. And just recently, Secretary Azar testified that there is no reason why any parent would not know where their child is located. Well, that is absolutely false. I spoke with 10 mothers and fathers who have no clue where their children are. They looked at me with tears running down their faces. They pleaded with me to help them find their children. This administration gave no thought to the damage inflicted on these families, and they clearly had no plan for how they would reunite them. We have 3 different entities working to reunify these families. 2 under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and Immigration and Customs Enforcement, and 1 under the Department of Health and Human Services, the Office of Refugee Resettlement. But none of them are working together. As a result, the Trump administration has missed its court-ordered deadline to reunite young children under 5 with their parents. 102 children under 5 years old are waiting to be reunited with their parents, but as far as we know, only 4 families have been reunited. The Trump administration has been ordered to reunite up to 3,000 children with their parents by July 26th, but they are on track to miss that deadline too. In the midst of all of this, HHS officials discovered that they have been holding a toddler who may be a U.S. citizen in detention for over a year. How could that be possible? How could the reunification process be so erratic, inefficient, and slow? This administration has been making excuses left and right, trying to pin the blame on anyone but themselves. They've suggested that the reunification process is slow because too many members of Congress are taking tours of these detention facilities. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that, because I can guarantee you I was not taking a tour when I tried to enter a children's detention facility and they locked me out. They would not let me in. I was not allowed in to check on the condition of these children or even to talk to anyone in charge about how they were taking care of children, toddlers, infants, kids under the age of 12 who have been separated from their parents, many for the first time. I was there to find out how taxpayer money was being spent and how the kids were being treated, but the facilities manager locked the door and gave me the number for a communications director to call to seek assistance. And with a handful of exceptions, most of my colleagues have also been turned away. The Trump administration is also saying that they're having trouble locating some of the parents. Part of the problem is that at least 12 of the parents with children under 5 years old have already been deported. Can you imagine that? Babies who can't even speak have no clue where their moms and dads went, and they might never know. The Trump administration can't pin the blame for this on Congress, Democrats, or anyone else. They're missing the deadline for one reason and one reason only, because they never made a plan to reunite these families. They never intended to. They didn't have a plan 2 weeks ago when I went down to the border, and they don't have one now. They created this chaos with no plan to put the broken pieces back together. They've had to start from scratch trying to locate parents and children detained across the country. And now we are hearing heartbreaking stories of reunification, toddlers who do not recognize their mothers anymore. The physiological trauma they have inflicted, this administration has inflicted on these children, will last a lifetime. So today, I am calling on President Trump to finally do his job and provide us with a concrete plan. I want to see results, and I won't stop fighting until every child has been reunited with their parents. Stop making excuses. Stop blaming Democrats for the crisis that you created, President Trump. And the other thing that I keep hearing from this administration and Mr. Trump, President Trump's allies, is that the Democrats want open borders. And this is not about open borders. Listen, I support strong, secure borders. I've spent my career fighting to uphold the law as the Attorney General of the state of Nevada for 8 years, fighting to secure our borders. It's not about secure borders. We need a plan to reunite these families because this is about our values. This is about human rights. This is about who we are as a country. And separating families is not who we are. We do not tear babies out of their mother's arms. We've always had a guiding principle when it comes to children. We do no harm. Whether they're Honduran children, Guatemalan children, Salvadorian children, or American children. We do no harm. And so I call on President Trump, abandon your inhumane, zero-tolerance immigration policy. Abandon the heartless decision to separate families. We should be looking for humane, cost-effective alternatives to detention for families fleeing violence. We don't need the Department of Defense to build internment camps for babies, toddlers, and kids. Locking up families who are seeking asylum under the laws that we have put in place to protect them would be a moral stain on our country for generations to come. President Trump, the American people demand that you explain how you plan to reunite these families that you've scarred forever and that you've ripped apart. Work with Democrats to solve the refugee crisis in Central America. Don't treat innocent children and their parents as political pawns. Don't turn your back on everything this country stands for. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.